Democrats' problem, besides having taken it on the chin, is trying to develop a bench. And then I think that gets back to the issue of message. It's interesting that at the national level, even Republican economists will say that all of the money, the $814 billion or so that was thrown by the administration and the Democratic Congress at the economy, helped. It's interesting to hear a lot of people, say Paul Krugman of the New York Times, a Nobel laureate, saying that there should have been even more, and that as a result, this is going to take even more time, to dig out of this hole. Governor McDonald has been very happy spending stimulus dollars. He does not say that, but he's, for the most part, content with them. I'm not answering your question because I'm not really even sure.
Yeah, well, I wasn't expecting a perfect answer.
That answer was perfect in its imperfection.
Yeah.
I'm a Supervisor Andrea McJimsey from Loudoun County. I wondered if you could comment on what's going on with the reduction in the DoD budget and Virginia's dependency. Frankly, our economy, much of it is dependent on the federal government, and how the politics of all of that's going to play out, especially since we keep suing the feds.
I think if you want to see a Virginia politician at his contradictory best, or her best, talk about defense spending. I haven't checked on this figure in a while, but I want to say that federal spending, domestic and defense, accounts for over a quarter of the gross state product. It is, Virginia politicians are perfectly happy with certain forms of big government. And one of them is defense spending. Of course, there's a great defense tradition in this state. Even before the Second World War, when defense-related spending really established its suburban footprint in this state. But most recently, of course, in Tidewater, Southampton Roads, this decision by the Obama administration to close the Joint Forces Command. Everyone was up in arms. All the Virginia politicians who talk about, complain about the government living beyond its means. And why isn't Washington committed to the same level of fiscal sanity and conservatism that Virginia is? They're very good about saying, don't cut my slice of the budget. And I suspect that that's really going to change. Look at how it's affecting the thinking of the defense industry. Northrop Grumman, which owns the shipyard in Newport News, was looking to sell that property. Now it looks like it'll be spun off and held, but it's clearly considered by the folks at the front office as anything but a moneymaker downrange. So that's going to be a problem. In the Washington area, I'm not exactly sure if we're going to see the precipitous declines that we've seen elsewhere. I mean, the government seems to be spending a lot of time and money pushing privatization and getting the private sector, particularly on the service side, to take over a lot of responsibilities for the federal government. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that continue and even make for some improvements. Northrop Grumman, for example, I think just got the contract for IT management for the Department of Homeland Security. Just, huge deal. Now, I know there are a lot of people. Was that giggle because of Mary Margaret Whittle? Of course. Feed it. We'll just leave it at that. There are different Senator Whipple, they're different sides of the House.
I hope so.
Northrop Grumman, the Northrop Grumman folks who are going to run the Homeland Security contract are different from the folks who run VETA. John.
Having seen a viable third-party candidate on the federal level in 2012.
You must be referring to Michael Bloomberg,
Probably, but
the mayor of New York. I don't know that he's done or said much to encourage that. Recently, there's a political writer by the name of John Hyman who used to write for the Economist, who wrote an interesting book called Game Change. He is advancing a scenario under which there would be a three-way race for the presidency, and Sarah Palin would be the Republican nominee for president. The contest would be pushed to the Congress, and we'd end up with a former Alaska governor as our president. That's an oversimplification, because there are all sorts of complications over the composition of congressional delegations, but there's something that you can chew over that'll either make for a restful night's sleep or a panicking one.
I'm Penny Gross from Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. You touched a little bit on redistricting for next year. And there was a lot of silliness in 2001 in the redistricting of the State House and Senate districts. Could you expand on what you're seeing in Richmond?
Well, one of the things, and in fact, the Speaker and I discussed this last night, one of the lesser told stories of this campaign are the gains that were made by Republicans at the legislative level. And that was not accidental. It was a concerted effort by a number of Republican organizations, including the Republican State Leadership Council, which is, of which Bill Howell was a beneficiary, and of which, Bob McDonnell was a beneficiary. It has raised millions of dollars. In fact, it made a single contribution to then Attorney General candidate Bob McDonnell about 2.5 weeks before the election of over $2 million. The redistricting brings out the worst in politicians, which makes for the best story. It's been a very tricky issue, I think, for both parties. Now that the Republicans are in the ascendancy in Virginia, I think it's proven to be a trickier issue. Governor McDonnell ran for office promising, I don't know what one cares to call it, apolitical, nonpartisan, bipartisan, common sense redistricting. He consistently refused to offer any kind of a framework for how that might be done. And I think that really spotlights the dilemma for someone like the governor. On one hand, there's probably a side of me who recognizes that redistricting, as practiced by both parties, can be a pluperfect abomination. But on the other hand, as the chief executive who recognizes that he needs friends in the legislature to carry out policy, is only going to push so far. This year, 2011, we're going to have a fascinating dynamic in that we have this balkanized state government. A Senate controlled by the Democrats, a House controlled by the Republicans, a Republican in the governor's chair, and a Democrat-controlled Justice Department in Washington. That's the first time. It will be the first time that there is a Democrat-controlled Justice Department watching the activities of a state whose governor is a Republican. And of course, you all know that Virginia is a Voting Rights Act state. This is because of the state's history of racial discrimination. I can't help but wonder